Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is your host, Sunny David. Welcome to another episode of For the Record India Season 2. Today, with us, we have May from Made in India, a presenter, a podcaster, music fiend, and of course, the founder of Made in India and a lover of all things weird, alternative, and abnormal, in her own words. So, this episode, like the last time, is split in part one and two. So, here's part one. Let's get to it.
How have you been, May?
I'm all right. I mean, we're still living in a pandemic,
Yeah.
so
Yes.
it's not like the greatest time in the
Hmm.
world. But I think I'm all right. I mean, at least I'm safe and indoors mostly. What about you guys?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah. So we've been doing good. This is our second season of the podcast. The first season was kind of a beta testing thing, and this is somewhere like we've sort of aligned ourselves and created a system to just run things. Oh yeah, by the way, I said two guests, but all of us were so excited. So I'm Aditya, that's Pranav there, and there's
Yeah.
Sunny.
Hi.
Yeah, so we started this podcast during the pandemic, and so it's been good, mixed feelings about the pandemic, but yeah, this has been the best thing about it.
Oh, that's really good. I mean,
Yeah,
as long as you're finding something that's like keeping you going and you're not slowly losing your mind.
yeah, exactly. That was our purpose behind starting this. Like we wanted something productive to do, and not just lie around all day doing nothing because there was nothing going on.
The
So
podcast.
honestly, that sounds like paradise to me right now. It's like lying around. Like I feel like doing nothing is a true luxury right now.
It is. It is.
Yeah, now that probably
Literally.
things are opening up again, and yeah, life has returned to normalcy, you can say, but not
Kind of.
completely. That
Kind of.
that fear is still there.
I really
I think a
believe it
lot of
is.
people in the sorry.
Yep. But I really believe the pandemic has actually changed a lot of things. I mean, even if you go out now, you don't feel the same that you felt 2 years ago. It's very
You
different.
really don't. I think there's also like a huge level of like I feel paranoia, right? Like I the other day my partner was walk in the evening and I'm like, oh my god, there's people, too many people are here. Like I literally felt like that. I thought I was going I felt like as if I came back home and I'm like, oh wow. It's like you're relieved. Like it's like right now, like seeing people and socializing, you think that would, make you feel good. And honestly, it stresses me out. I mean,
Yeah,
unless
yeah,
it's
that
people
has
that I
happened.
know already.
And that has happened. Crowds have become overwhelming suddenly for some reason.
And it's so
Like
funny. I've
even
had like so many conversations. Oh, sorry.
hey,
No,
go
no,
on,
no.
go on.
Go on, go on, go on.
Please,
It's cool.
please go
Um,
on.
so I've had conversations with like, like old friends who used to organize music festivals. And, a lot of them were like, yeah, because I mean, the entire event industry shut down overnight, right? It's like this entire industry was lost. And so
Yeah.
I was like, how would you run a music festival at this time? I was thinking like, I was like, would it be like you'd have a stage? And then you know how they had those like markings of like,
Mhm.
stand here. So then
Right.
everyone would have a little circle that is like 6 feet apart. You're all standing watching festival, but the other person is 6 feet away from you. You're like, I'm safe, but anytime at the gig,
Yeah,
So
it's like a school assembly with
yeah,
a
It's
one
exactly like a
hand
school
yeah,
assembly.
yeah,
Pretty
doing
much.
fast for sports day.
you can maintain a one hand distance like
yeah.
all around you.
Yeah.
That's how it is.
Yeah.
So there's this band called Flaming Lips. So what these guys did was that they're based in the UK, David, right? Or America?
They're Americans.
Americans, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah, they're Americans.
so they had live shows and they had all these peoples in a bubble, in a big bubble. Like even the
Yeah.
band members were
Are you
in a bubble.
serious?
Yeah.
It's pretty spectacular looking at that. They actually shot a music video too, like that, and even live performances
Yeah.
entire in a bubble. The entire audience was in a bubble, and they themselves were in a bubble. It was
Yeah,
like,
it looks
Hey, it's
suffocating
cool.
though.
So
Hey,
It
it's
does
like
look
a
suffocating.
large softball you get in that amusement parks, on the water
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
people. So it's that all the band members are sitting in that and playing. So maybe that's the future now.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah,
But-
man.
But so May, so it's crazy that you've been doing this for 6 years. I mean, 6 years is a very long time. And so, like, did you get the time to reflect on your years of doing Made in India, like in the pandemic, or has
A
it all
little bit.
been?
I mean, yeah, I think all of us have also had moments during the pandemic where you're like, what am I doing with my life? Everyone went through a small existential crisis
Yeah,
in the pandemic. Of like,
Every
what am I
day.
doing with my life? And then everyone made a different decision. Either people just like went like, because I was like straight into work mode, right? I've like not taken a breather at all, like, you know, during the pandemic. And I know people who are like, I'm just going to move to Goa. And then that's it. You know? And then so I'm just like, so it's like one or the other. Like either you're, no, actually there's one more, there's a third option. I'm moving back home with my parents. That is third option.
Yeah.
But I think that I did. I mean, I of course I think went through a moment where I was like, what am I doing with my life? Is this really what I want to do? Not so much with Made in India, but I think running my own company, because you know, besides being an indie music podcast, I also run like a podcast production company and consultant. So being an entrepreneur at this time is rough. Like it does take a toll on you to a certain extent. But actually being Made in India, the podcast, has been the thing that sort of like it's just the same as you guys kind of kept you going
Yeah.
through the pandemic. Because honestly, like I started doing like a slightly new format on my show. I started doing these mixtapes with artists. It's pretty much like a real radio play kind of thing, you know, radio show kind of thing. We're just playing music and talking about it in between. And I would name it like weird names. Because like anything, whatever I was feeling at the time, and the name of the mixtape had nothing to do with the music, like just nothing.
I remember
would just name it,
Faluda.
like I've got a Faluda, because
Yeah.
that was like okay, February, and my producer Hussein, who is wonderful, and he always like helps me with ideas, and so we were trying to think of like terms of endearment. You know, why do we call it like hi RTD? And I'm like, I'm not gonna call it that. And then I was like, why don't we reinstate new terms of endearment? So my sexy Faluda or my cute little Tyson. So like I was like, let's have new names, because always like a name of a dessert, right? It's always like some cute. As I wanted to have like something. I've got a mixtape called Bindi. I've got a mixtape, like my latest one's called Vacay. Like, because I was just like, I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and I was like, man, I need a vacation. And they were like, take 2 days off. And I was like, no, I want to be sitting on a boat, sipping cocktails, eating fruit plates. That is a vacation, not sitting in my house for 2 days. What is this? So yeah, so I think I had this moment where one of my head of production at the time last year was like, we're slowly seeing May's mental degradation as the mixtapes go by. Like as weirder it's become. We're just like, we're seeing her breakdown live. That was my podcast.
A vacation for 2 days at home is like it's not called a vacation anymore. It's a quarantine.
Yeah.
That's become quarantine.
Exactly. My God. Exactly. Tell me about it.
Yeah.
Oh, geez. So yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I mean, how did the audience, what was the audience's reception to these names? Like going so obscure.
So one thing is that, like, I have to say one thing that has excited me so much about, like, very recently in the pandemic is, like, actually the mixtapes is only, like, a recent, a change in format of the show. What my original show was actually to be doing, what do you call it? Recording sessions in studio, right? One of the things that I would be doing was that I was getting artists to come into the studio. We would do live sessions and they perform live. And now because of the pandemic, I'm not able to do that. And I really do miss doing that because to be in a studio, like I think the studio's always been kind of like my home. Like I've been doing radio for like, over a decade and podcasting in the last 6 years. So I've always like had this sort of relationship with being in a studio. That's why like your background, Aditya, is giving me nostalgia. So my thing is that I've always been in this situation where I really miss being in the studio. So I think recently I've had people sort of tell me that like, hey, we're done with the mixtapes. Like when are you getting back into the studio? Which was so refreshing for me because what I also do is a straight up kind of radio show. So I think people discover so many new artists and I do every day. I have so much music in like our inbox and every day, my producer is just like, so have you heard any of the music that like a million people have sent you yet? And I'm like, no. And it's amazing. Like I'll get like, post-punk bands from like Chandigarh, or I'll get, some obscure band from like Vellore or something. And it's like really bizarre. Like the artists that you find and what music they're making. And also, to be honest, like not everything is like amazing. There is varying levels of quality. But when you find a gem, it's amazing. It's a really great feeling.
That happens. I mean, like when we were considering inviting you to the podcast, for us it was a shot in the dark. Like she must be flooded with emails, like about regarding like.
Yeah, you guys have been. I don't admit, you've been so patient. I've just been like, can't do, no, okay, no, I can't.
Yeah, I mean, this was supposed to happen last week, right?
It's 2 weeks ago, I think.
Yeah. So
even
like,
then I was 5 minutes late.
Well, but we were really thrilled that you at least responded. It was a big thing for us. And we're just starting out, I mean, we understand, like, even now that we are just starting out, we get people, asking us to feature their songs in our playlist and weekly recommendations and whatever. So we can just imagine what you must be going through, like, getting all that in.
A lot.
The thing
it
is that
really is a lot.
Yeah. So I was just saying that the thing is that before we even started, with the recording process of our first season, we faced so many issues that anything that comes our way is like this is better than that situation. So we were supposed to record this artist, and he delayed us for 3 weeks. And on the day before, he was like, "No, guys, my manager says no." So yeah, we started with that.
And that was the first artist we were going to get, actually. The first artist ever.
Oh my god! And they were like, "Oh, I'll come," and then they were like, "Actually, my manager was like, no."
That's what happened. That's what happened.
I feel like it's a difficult thing. Like sometimes I get artists. I mean, it goes both ways. Sometimes I've gotten artists who will just take their own sweet time and not tell you. And a manager is amazing because they become this sort of, get things done super quickly. And the other is that the artist will be game for stuff and the manager will just be like a pain. So I don't know, like I always get really mixed. I can't ever say that it's one or the other because I've had experiences of both regardless. So
fair enough.
Wait, do you get rejected even now? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Rejected in the sense?
Like when you invite an artist to your studio or for an episode of a podcast or to a live performance, do they say like, is there like, has it ever happened that someone has said no to you, especially now that you're?
Ah, man.
No.
I mean, there have. I'll give you. I mean, I wouldn't name names, but like the reason is legit though. So I've had Rishi Bradu from Black, one of like my favorite artists. I love those guys and always been a fan. And I've been trying to get Bradu on the show for ages, but I think he was kind of like he didn't want to do a stripped down set or something. And at that time I was only doing sort of stripped down acoustic set. And I was like, dude, if like Grohl can do a stripped down set, why can't you? And so I think them, but like I'm totally respectful of that. I'm like, I always say it's your set, it's how you want to do it. If I'm asking them to do a stripped down version, I mean, now I think I'm more capable of doing a slightly more elaborate set, but at the time that I had asked them, and this is when they were still kind of together. Now I don't even know where they are, but this is years ago. I had asked them, and he was like, "No, man, I want to do a full set," because I was like, "It has to be acoustic." I was very like rigid because like I couldn't. The studios I was working with at that time, I couldn't afford to do a full drum kit and all that kind of stuff, right? Or plug your bass in or something. So it had to be acoustic, and he didn't want to do it. So again, that's okay. I think every artist has the ability to want to do their set the way they want to, and if they don't, and so I mean, I've been really lucky. Like, it's not even, and again, it depends on who. Like, I've been so lucky. Like being a 90s, 80s, 90s kid, I got like Apache Indian on the show, which was literally the ultimate. It was just like, if I got Apache, I'll retire now. Just like, wow. And he was amazing. So my thing is that I've had a chance to have some like really cool artists. And of course, there is a possibility that like it's not that like artists are rejecting you. It's just either they're not available or they're on because I'm based in Bombay, sometimes they're on tour and did like the toughest band. And again, they've not said no. It's just been difficult. Like Saikuram Bridge, I've tried 3 times to get them on the show. And even like we were going to do this elaborate setup, right? Because there are like 20 of them. And so we were even working with the studio and their management to figure it out. And yeah, I really try hard to get them on the show. And every time they came, I try, and then it just wouldn't happen. And so, yeah, it's hard. But again, it's not really so much of a full-on rejection. It's more like it's just kind of tough and it's not happened yet. So
it's a typical message, right? Sorry, we can't do right now. We are very busy and we hope to see you soon.
I've done that. I've definitely gotten those. And I've seen the other side of this too. So I've had artists who've flown down to India or delayed their ticket to go back to a place or something. Like just recently it happened. I did this sort of named after the Mumbai local, right? I do this lady special.
Yeah.
And I had an artist who was supposed to go back to Chennai, and she delayed her ticket and to go back to Chennai just so she could be on the show. And I've had artists, like I've had there's another guy called Yael Mazumdar, incredible jazz artist. And he's someone I used to watch at Blue Frog, and he had supposedly come down for a tour that like didn't end up happening, and he was in Calcutta. He flew down to Bombay to do the interview and then go back. So I was again, and TL like was so happy because we picked him up from the airport. Like we were really nice because he'd come all the way from Germany, had like a really bad experience in India, and then he asked me, he's like, "Maed, would you still be interested in interviewing me?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." He's like, "Cool. So if I book my ticket to come to Bombay, you guys will like." We're like, "Yeah, sure." And like we work at CAD, which is so close to the airport anyway. So we were like, "Come, bring it." And we spoke to the studio so he could leave his stuff there, things like that. Poor guy. Like, and so, yeah, and like it's, for him, he felt like the sacrifice of like that ticket was worth it. He's like, even if I came all the way to India, because his tour got canned. He's like, even he came all the way to India, and he's like, even if I went to Maed in India, I'm good. So I was like. So I think I've had an equal measure of both, of stuff not working out, but then people going through, hell and high water to try to get here. It's been an honor.
That was
okay. So I had a question regarding the thing you did. You do live with bands. So did you start that when you started out with Maed in India? So were you on to live performances immediately, or how did it work out for you?
No, I think so. We started doing the live stuff about a year or 2 later. So I think we started in 2015. And the live stuff was like 2017. Oh my God, I hope my numbers are not terrible if it's not. I think it was 2017. But we were, at that time, we were working with Saban, then Geo Saban now. But they were interested in doing live stuff with us because it's one of the few podcasts that you could take live, right? It's the format
Right.
is so easy. And the premise was that I would do the live interview with the band and then they'd perform. And one of the things that I would always ask every artist who'd perform, because I was lucky enough to have, a good relationship with all of them, was that I would get them to play some new music, something that people haven't heard before. Because the whole idea of Made in India and where it came from was that it was about music discovery. Because for me, being someone who's been on the radio, I grew up listening to the radio and discovering all the cool bands and cool music I'd listened to, and thought for me India to represent that it was about discovering new music by artists. And so my thing was that the live event was pretty much the same. So you would be able to watch these artists talk about, weird things. And I'd always find really odd stories. Like I don't know, that like Warren Mendonça likes to eat popcorn with Maggie or something. And then Soratma were full of weird story. Yeah, something. And I can't even remember what it was, but it's something of that sort. And then you would have like Swaratma anyway, full of like weird and wonderful stories. And I'm not even kidding. I would literally call their managers. Like I think Swaratma's old manager, like I called him and I was like, give me some stories, bro. And then he's like, what do you want to know? 2 minutes, I'll call you back. And then like he would just like, his name is Deba and Dave, and he just like rattled off about 15 stories about the band. And I was like, this is great. So I had my daughter to like just, and they were like, who did you call? Like it was like, I could have called their mother, security guards, everything. And I was like, I know everything about you. I know what vegetables you buy.
Damn, that is a whole lot of digging you do.
Right, because I think for me, because I also come from a journalist background, right? I've been a journalist for a long time. So like doing an interview that is well researched was so important because it helps you, it breaks down any barriers that you have with your guests. Like suddenly, number one, they realize you know so much about them. And number two, they realize how invested you are in them. So yeah. Plus, it just makes you seem like some creepy ass stock road.
So what all goes into the logistics of an interview, right? Like I mean, I guess every band is different. Every band plays n number of instruments. So how do you get around that? What do you do to make it streamlined for you as a process? Is what I mean.
So usually I will pick artists, or artists might get in touch with me. I try to like, most of the time it's usually either artists who've never been on the show, or it'll be because they're releasing some new music and they want to come in or something, or maybe they have unreleased music, who knows. And first thing would be that either I or my producer will get in touch with them saying, hey, we'd love to feature on Made in India. Let me know when you're free. And it's like you're just booking time with them, right? And then they have their whole, like, as you would have your kind of like your writer, like whatever that your setup is going to be for that session. And different people have different setups. I usually try to do a more stripped down version of their songs, because to have a full-on setup is like you recording your album, and that's not what I want. I want it to be a little stripped down. It should sound different as what people may have heard before. I've been lucky enough to be working in the last 2 years with an incredible studio that is one of these, it's like a musician studio, right? It's called Island City Studio in Kha. And they're wonderful and they're amazing and they're so good to work with because they really understand artists. So they already have a drum kit and they already have a baby grand piano. So like when, I've had situations where like say a Pratiku has like walked in, he's like, can I play the baby grand? And they're like, okay, now we need to mic the baby grand. Just like, so I've been lucky enough that when people have walked in, they wanted to do a version of their song in a certain way, and it's nice. And so I try to prepare as much as I possibly can for it in terms of like when the art. So like, even though the interview might be 45 minutes to an hour, the session's about 3.5, 4 hours, because depending on the band and the setup, it might just be, two guys with, acoustic guitars and that's it, all the way to full on, like drum kit, tabla, guitar, electric, keys, this. So then it's like a super, so you're not only like, setting up, doing sound check, and then recording, and then having to, sort of pack up or whatever it is. And it's like, it's a lot. So like I said, try to do more stripped down sets. And sometimes some of them turn out to be amazing. One favorite stripped down sets in terms of like, did not expect it to sound so incredible was Paradigm Shift. Had done their like this incredible prog metal band, and they had released their second album 10 years later. After their first album, their debut album, like 10 years later, sophomore album comes out, and I asked her to do a strip down set. So can you imagine like these like full sound prog metal band, and then completely stripped down? So they had no drum kit. Their drummer was on percussion. They had a violinist there. It was so amazing. So when you hear that set, if you hear their album, it doesn't sound the same at all. So that was really fun when you hear like such a completely different sound. And, it strips down, it makes it so sort of raw and vulnerable, and it's kind of nice. It's a nice place to be in. So I sometimes feel like I'm really lucky to get artists to be able to do some amazing stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds incredible. I mean, just the way you're telling it, it just sounds.
I sometimes feel so lucky, man.
I mean, it sounds rewarding.
Turn
I
out the
feel.
music happens.
Yeah,
it is, and I do think that, and I think this is just testament of like music in general, which is that you're not just listening to music, and it doesn't really matter what language it's in. A lot of the time when you're experiencing music, you're feeling it more than you're just hearing it. And I think regardless of language, like I grew up listening to all kinds of music when I was younger. I mean, it's not like Gypsy King sang in like English, man. Like you've heard everything under the sun. And then when you hear that music, you just kind of get into it. And so I think that music has that amazing ability. Like now, and you guys are like privileged to know right now, but coming up on Independence Day, so last year I did this thing where when the lockdown kind of happened, I was really sort of disillusioned because like India started having border tensions with like Nepal and China and Bangladesh and everyone, right? And you're like, this is the worst time to have this. Like the whole world is going through a pandemic. There is so much, like there's something terrible happening in the world, and now you're bickering over a line in the sand,
Yeah.
And it kind of makes you feel really weird when, like, a geographical line dictates how you should feel about the person across it, and I find that really odd. And so on Independence Day, everyone's celebrating indie music, and you're like, oh, okay, fine. So I decided to not do that. And I was like, I wanted to represent that sense of like compassion and like, how do I show, that, sense of like, brethren and camaraderie or whatever. And I thought I'd do that the best way I knew how, which is like being a fan of music. And so I started like looking for bands from Pakistan and Sri Lanka and Bangladesh and Nepal, and finding cool indie artists from there and trying to figure a way to feature their music on my show. And I've been really lucky. Like we found some amazing artists, and just also to understand what the indie music is like there. And it's what a coincidence that it's so similar to ours, because weren't we all part of like, it's so strange that we're all in the same subcontinent and yet we're divided. And and then I'm doing that again this year. It's called Our Neighbors, and I'm doing that again this year, and I've had some again amazing artists. There is an artist from Lahore called Natasha Noorani, who's just most meme-tastic person I've ever met. Like I featured her last year with she has a duo with another bassist called Zara Paracha, and it's called Biryani Brothers, and it's just like a biryani, and it's so funny, and they're like a pop duo. And now Natasha has some solo music that's out, and they started this thing called Lahore Music Meet, which is like this festival in Lahore, and they've invited us to come there, and we're like, yeah. And then yeah, it's amazing. And then there's another artist that I've just featured called Divas Gurung from Nepal, who has this really sweet song called Lejao, and it's a song that his dad wrote like in the 70s. And I learned so much. Like, I didn't know this, but like there's a word in it called mal, which like it was like, he's like, in those days in like the 70s when my dad was young, if you went abroad, it meant you went to India. And so you take back some words, and malum was a word that they took back. And so he was like this dude who would say malum, and so because of that, it was like a cool thing to do. And he's like, it's so strange. It's like a mark of like history and a time, and the song is very sweet. So again, I've had like a chance to meet some amazing artists from like everywhere. There's like this rock duo who are like, we don't want to be any kind of rock. We are only just the word rock. No prog and no art and no nothing. Rock duo from Bangladesh called Dads in the Park, who are so much fun. Like when I did an interview on video, so one of the guys, he had a bed behind him, and a guy was sleeping. His legs were sticking out his shoulders. I'm like, is there a guy sleeping? He's like, yeah. He's like, I don't have a computer, so I came to my friend's house to do the interview.
Oh God!
This guy asleep behind him. So funny. And so it was like, so I had like the best time. And again, I wish I could travel and be able to meet them. But you just sometimes don't have this opportunity, and the best way you can do it is like this online. So our neighbors,
the guy sleeping on the bed thing is the reason we have backgrounds here.
I mean, yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Like I share a room with my brother, and
Yeah,
like I share a room with my brother. It's like you never know how you'll catch him in the recording. It's just a precautionary measure.
That reminds
And also,
me.
I'm allowed to
there,
keep my
man.
room messy.
That reminds me of a cool story. So my mom's a teacher, right? So she teaches all these kids online, and they're some small toddlers. So they always have the grandparents and stuff around them. So there's one kid in her class, and his grandmother and grandfather are oblivious of the fact that he's in front of many people, studying and stuff. So they're always in their undergarments, just roaming behind him, and my mom's always bursting out laughing, like, please, for God's sake, use a background. I don't want to see your grandfather half naked.
Sunny, are you Malayali?
Technology.
No, I am not. My father's a Tamil, though, so I do have roots down there.
Oh,
in
so
India.
you usually so my thing is that if your last name is the first name, like David, George,
Yeah.
Thomas, I'm Thomas.
Yeah.
You're usually like a Malayaliano. So
Fair enough. But no, yeah.
But like where you are right now, like we aspire to be as a podcast. That's the ultimate dream.
Yeah,
you are living our ultimate dream right now.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know how I got here, but I feel very lucky.
Yeah, but it's amazing you got
Yeah,
here. Somehow, anyhow would do for us.
How easy or difficult? How easy or difficult was it in the start when you started with the first episode? Nikhil, I think, right?
Nikhil, this was my first, and my 200th.
Nice.
Oh, Nikhil. The thing was that I genuinely, because I'd left radio, right? And radio comes with its own, sort of clout. And so to some extent, you say, hey, I'm going to feature you on the radio. Instantly people are like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt like saying the word podcast, everyone's going to be like, think twice before I get on a podcast. And so my hope was that people would believe in me and what I wanted to do. And my podcast was kind of like a reflection of that, right? Because I already used to handle the indie music show that they used to do on Thursday nights at Radio One.
Yeah.
And so a lot of artists knew me already. And before that, I was working for now erstwhile NH7.in, which was like this website that everyone used to go to again discover music and alternative culture. So in that same way, the podcast was a way for me to create a space where you could discover artists and artists could just be themselves and talk about their music and play their music. And I called two people. I called up Mohit Mukhi and I called up, and both of them were like, yeah, sure, why not? And Nikhil, I've interviewed him so many times. And every time I meet him, even if I ask him the same question, he always gives me a different answer. Like, he is probably one of the best people to interview, because to have someone that you can ask the same question to and they give you a different answer every time is awesome. Like, I was like, like the standard question, so tell me, do you grow up with music? Like, how did your relationship with music begin? And one time Nikhil was like, I used to watch Tom and Jerry, cartoons, and like the music in the background, I was like, where does the music come from? Another was like, I was in the choir, or my building society choir or something like that. And then so he had like a different story every time. And even in the 200th episode, I'd interviewed him at least 5-6 times before that. I still discovered new stuff about him. Like, I didn't know that he was an engineer, and he went on a ship and nearly lost his hand, from a weird engineering accident that happened. I was like, you're an engineer, bro?
At least you don't sound like one.
And I make fun of him a lot. Like, I will just be like, tell me one song of Nikhil's that doesn't have the word love in it. It's like, love is a liar, and like something love, and angry love, and quiet love, and love is not here, and love was there, and like, like, and I make fun of him a lot. I mean, now of course it's different. Like, he's doing Hindi stuff, and he's, but yeah, I feel like, but he can take as good as, like, he can give as good as he takes, right? So it's always nice to have that kind of banter, and and I always like do like a little ripping. Like, I'm always like someone that you shouldn't take yourself too seriously, no matter how much of a consummate musician that you may be. I'm always like, it's good when you don't take yourself seriously, and that's fun.
Yeah. I mean, the point is having fun, right?
Yeah.
So why would
you?
Yeah,
but like sometimes people can, like, I've had moments where, talking about Mohit Mukhi, I think we had, he had a keyboardist that was in, and the guy who was on keys was like, I don't want to talk, I don't want to say anything, don't ask me any questions. And I was like, okay. And I mainly was talking to Mohit and this girl who was like playing trumpet as well, I think, on the set. And halfway through the interview, this guy was just like, so I have something I want to say about Mohit. And he just went on an absolute rant about Mohit. It was so good. I was like fun and doing some stuff. And then suddenly he felt like he wanted to say something and be like, well, Mo always has to do this. You always have to do that. And so he had like his own like little rant. It kind of like came bubbling over, which was so, that was so much fun. And it's great. Like, I think that having that opportunity to just like get someone who wants to be quiet to actually talk is like amazing. But yeah, sorry, you can ask me more questions.
All right, that was part 1, folks. We'll be seeing you with the rest of the conversation next week at the same time. Hope you enjoyed this one. We had a lot of fun, and hope you enjoy the next one too. Meanwhile, make sure to follow us on Instagram, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Spotify if possible. Good night. Have a nice time.